The classical Latin alphabet, also known as the Roman alphabet, is a writing system that evolved from the visually similar Cumæan Greek version of the Greek alphabet. The Greek alphabet, including the Cumæan version, descended from the Phoenician abjad, while the Phoenician alphabet is derived from Egyptian hieroglyphics. The Etruscans who ruled early Rome adopted and modified the Cumæan Greek alphabet. The Etruscan alphabet was in turn adopted and further modified by the ancient Romans to write the Latin language. During the Middle Ages, scribes adapted the Latin alphabet for writing Romance languages, direct descendants of Latin, as well as Celtic, Germanic, Baltic, and some Slavic languages. With the age of colonialism and Christian evangelism, the Latin scripts spread beyond Europe, coming into use for writing indigenous American, Australian, Austronesian, Austroasiatic, and African languages. More recently, linguists have also tended to prefer the Latin script or the International Phonetic Alphabet when transcribing or creating written standards for non-European languages, such as the African Reference Alphabet. The term Latin alphabet may refer to either the alphabet used to write Latin, or other alphabets based on the Latin script, which is the basic set of letters common to the various alphabets descended from the classical Latin one, such as the English alphabet. These Latin alphabets may discard letters, like the Rotokaas alphabet, or add new letters, like the Danish and Norwegian alphabets. Letter shapes have evolved over the centuries, including the creation for medieval Latin of lowercase forms which did not exist in the classical period alphabet. History. Origins. It is generally believed that the Romans adopted the Cumæan alphabet, a variant of the Greek alphabet, in the 7th century BC from Cumae, a Greek colony in southern Italy. The ancient Greek alphabet was in turn based upon the Phoenician abjad. From the Cumæan alphabet, the Etruscan alphabet was derived and the Romans eventually adopted 21 of the original 27 Etruscan letters. Archaic Latin alphabet. The letter C was the Western form of the Greek gamma, but it was used for the sounds and K alike, possibly under the influence of Etruscan, which might have lacked any voice plosives. Later, probably during the 3rd century BC, the letter Z, unneeded to write Latin properly, was replaced with the new letter G, a C modified with a small vertical stroke, which took its place in the alphabet. From then on, G represented the voiced plosive, while C was generally reserved for the voiceless plosive K. The letter K was used only rarely, in a small number of words such as calendae, often interchangeably with C. Classical Latin alphabet. After the Roman conquest of Greece in the 1st century BC, Latin adopted the Greek letters Y and Z to write Greek loanwords, placing them at the end of the alphabet. An attempt by the Emperor Claudius to introduce 3 additional letters did not last. Thus it was during the classical Latin period that the Latin alphabet contained 23 letters. The Latin names of some of these letters are disputed. In general, however, the Romans did not use the traditional names as in Greek. The names of the plosives were formed by adding e to their sound, and the names of the continuants consisted either of the Bayer sound, or the sound preceded by e. The letter Y, when introduced, was probably called hi, as in Greek, the name upsilon not being in use yet. But this was changed to I Greeker, as Latin speakers had difficulty distinguishing its foreign sound, Y, from I. Z was given its Greek name, Zeta. This scheme has continued to be used by most modern European languages that have adopted the Latin alphabet. For the Latin sounds represented by the various letters, see Latin speaking and pronunciation. For the names of the letters in English, see English alphabet. The primary diacritic was the apex used to mark long vowels, which had previously been written double. However, in place of taking an apex, the letter I was written taller, iacuto v. For example, what is today transcribed Lucia Philly was written LVCI Philly in the inscription at right. The primary mark of punctuation was the interpunct, which was used as a word divider, though it fell out of use after 200 AD. Old Roman cursive script, also called majuscule cursive and capitalized cursive, was the everyday form of handwriting used for writing letters by merchants writing business accounts, by schoolchildren learning the Latin alphabet, and even emperors issuing commands. A more formal style of writing was based on Roman square capitals, but cursive was used for quicker, informal writing. It was most commonly used from about the 1st century BC to the 3rd century, but it probably existed earlier than that. It led to uncial, a majuscule script commonly used from the 3rd to 8th centuries AD by Latin and Greek scribes. New Roman cursive script, also known as minuscule cursive, was in use from the 3rd century to the 7th century, and uses letter forms that are more recognizable to modern eyes. A, B, D, and E had taken a more familiar shape, and the other letters were proportionate to each other. This script evolved into the medieval scripts known as Merovingian and Carolingian minuscule. Medieval and later developments. It was not until the Middle Ages that the letter W was added to the Latin alphabet to represent sounds from the Germanic languages which did not exist in medieval Latin, and only after the Renaissance did the convention of treating I and U as vowels, and J and V as consonants, become established. Prior to that, the former had been merely allographs of the latter. With the fragmentation of political power, the style of writing changed and varied greatly throughout the Middle Ages, even after the invention of the printing press. Early deviations from the classical forms were the uncial script, a development of the Old Roman cursive, and various so-called minuscule scripts that developed from New Roman cursive, of which the Carolingian minuscule was the most influential, introducing the lowercase forms of the letters, as well as other writing conventions that have since become standard. The languages that use the Latin script today generally use capital letters to begin paragraphs and sentences and proper nouns. The rules for capitalization have changed over time, and different languages have varied in their rules for capitalization. Old English, for example, was rarely written with even proper nouns capitalized, whereas modern English of the 18th century had frequently all nouns capitalized, in the same way that modern German is written today, e.g., alle Schwestern der alten Stadt hatten die Vogel gesehen. Spread. The Latin alphabet spread, along with the Latin language, from the Italian peninsula to the lands surrounding the Mediterranean Sea with the expansion of the Roman Empire. The eastern half of the empire, including Greece, Turkey, the Levant, and Egypt, continued to use Greek as a lingua franca, but Latin was widely spoken in the western half, and as the Western Romance languages evolved out of Latin, they continued to use and adapt the Latin alphabet. With the spread of Western Christianity during the Middle Ages, the script was gradually adopted by the peoples of Northern Europe who spoke Celtic languages or Germanic languages, Baltic languages, as well as by the speakers of several Uralic languages, most notably Hungarian, Finnish and Estonian. The alphabet also came into use for writing the West Slavic languages and several South Slavic languages, as the people who spoke them adopted Roman Catholicism. In the 20th century, Romanization schemes were applied to many languages. The spread of the Latin alphabet among previously illiterate peoples has inspired the creation of new writing systems, such as the Avoyuli alphabet in Vanuatu, which replaces the letters of the Latin alphabet with alternative symbols.